And then from there, you never got the part which you were thankful for, but it was a turning point for you specifically about how you wanted to go about and taking the direction for your career. And then, but you had also had that mindset about how you were just going to figure it out for yourself. That's something that you had developed throughout the years since you were a child up into that point where you actually, well, I wouldn't say you actually started, but it seemed like that you had taken a direction with that thought process. So that part was very interesting to me. And then I came across some things that I wanted to go over with you about what it was that you had started to do. And I was hoping if you can clarify that timeline for me to see if that was the first step, if you will. What I came across was a 3-episode show that I came across on YouTube called, oh crap, what was it called? Chrome Management, I think is what I had.
Oh, no.
So you got surprised with that? Okay.
Yeah.
I'm happy because I was hoping that would be a good way to start off the conversation. So this was about 10 years ago, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
But you were a producer on there. You were involved with the process. I saw the credits and what you had done and so on. So I wasn't sure if that was around the same time that all had occurred and that was when you had started that whole process. Is that more or less?
I think that was us just having fun because it's a completely different tone than I'm doing right now. And it was a lot of my friends who did improv who were hilarious. I think I was right out of college at that one, but I was actually like, oh my God, I should take it down. But you know what? It was really fun. And it was more of a satire. Ironically enough, it's still relevant. It's kind of an influencer who can't sing, but fakes everything before there were influencers. Now that I'm looking back on it. We just, had fun with it. I mean, we had a song called Bad Girl by Day, Bad Girl by Night. It was like, that was, I think a lot of us were really wanting to create content. And this is before it was a bit more accessible. It was kind of that middle phase, not everyone, we didn't have 4K on our phones.
Yeah.
Movies like Tangerine weren't made yet.
Right.
I think it was still a little difficult and challenging to get. But we think we shot on a 5D and then had some rigs, and it kind of made it documentary style because it was not reliant on the production value for it to be funny. So we said, let's shoot it in this kind of office style manner where it's following a really small music management company and this kind of icon that was actually loosely based off of Tila Tequila. That's how old.
That's what I thought too. That's what I thought. Yeah.
And because Margarita Salt, and that was a very different time. And my friend at the time, she who played one of the characters, both of them were singers, and there's often times where some of their side gigs are writing for other people, and maybe some of these people aren't as dynamic as them, but they have to pay the bills. And we thought that would be kind of fun to do because it's very Singing in the Rain, where you're kind of creating all this work for this other person to create and produce, and the irony. But what I think is so funny now, looking back at that, is, Omar Najam wrote it, who did was at UCB and did improv a lot at the time. And he did a really funny job at being this random character that was kind of incompetent. And I just really thought it was interesting to show sides of the entertainment industry that were kind of relatable and a satire and funny, like we're playing at a retirement home. And I thought it was kind of like, we booked a gig, and this kind of dry sense of humor. But looking at it now, it's oddly creepily not too far away from some of the curated content online that people think they can kind of fake it till you make it.
Well, let me ask you about this here, because when I presented that, I came across the videos, because there's 3 of them that I saw, and I actually saw them more than once just to kind of get myself.
My finest work.
So I was, what was my question? Because I was going to get somewhere with this here. So my question was that you said previously that you thought about taking it down because I'm not sure if you thought you were embarrassed by it. I wasn't sure the whole process behind it, but you had thought about taking it down. But then, you have looked back on it now, it seemed like you have a lot of fond memories of that whole process there. So obviously that experience that you had gone through and working with everybody, putting all the things together, it left a good impression on you. Of course, I feel like there were some things you probably look back and be like, oh, I could have done this a little better, of course. So, but when you started doing that again, was that around the time? And you may have answered my question. If you did, I apologize for asking again. But was that around the time with that audition that I was referring to previously about where this had all began for you to start to figure out how to start to implement ideas that you have come across with to start figuring out how you want to go about taking your career in a different path?
Yes.
Okay.
I think that was the start. And then I started kind of focusing more on dramas and those kind of projects. But I had such a great time. And that was the whole thing.
Right.
I didn't take it down because I went, my assistant at the time, she said, look what I found. And I went, oh my God. And she was just, she said it was funny. And she was also a comedian. And I thought that was a compliment. And honestly, not taking yourself too seriously. I thought about it and went, you know what? We all have to relax as artists because we all have to start somewhere, and it's very vulnerable. Put out your work there. And yeah, I think I look at it more like, look how far I've come rather than like, oh no.
Right. Well, I'm glad you didn't take it down because I'll be completely honest. When I saw, I was like, I guarantee if I bring this up to her, she's going to be shocked by someone looking into this here, because that was something that I was hoping to find, because I like to find something at a certain point at the at a person's life, as far as where they were at that point and where they are now, and seeing the fluctuation, if you will, of their career choices they've made, knowing full and well that it could be very much a risk, but at the same time it could be very satisfying too. So for me, I got a little bit of both. As far as your approach with it, you're taking, I'm assuming, a risk in terms of like something that you probably weren't. I'm not sure if it's something you did commonly as far as like comedy is concerned, because I don't recall, as far as I can tell from the previous resumes that I've seen of yours, that there really isn't a whole lot of comedy in your filmography, if I came across correctly. So this was actually like a fresh take on looking at yourself, looking at you, I meant to say, at a point in your life where you had taken a pretty bad experience and then flipping it around and making fun of the industry in a lot of ways. So I did take from it. So I thought that was very creative, to be honest with you. So, but then there's other things that I've come across too, with regards about how you have, I feel like you have grown. Just listen to some interviews that I've come across with you. And I'm actually looking at my notes right now because there's a lot that you said. I was trying to condense some of the more, I guess, impactful things you've said that I was hoping that you could reflect on, and how you felt about what you said, those things at the time, and obviously where you are now, considering the subject matter of your current film is. Someone had asked you about one of your favorite quotes, and it was a quote that I did not expect, which I thought was very charming, which was, I always get where I'm going because I walk away from where I've been. And that's from Christopher Robin. And then you actually went into this whole like paragraph as far as what that meant for you. And then at the very end, you consolidated, which I thought I'm going to use that instead, which was that you basically had said that, you face things head on, you explore who you are, and learn to walk away from the things that don't serve your growth. And that was something that I had noticed with the career choices you've made, about what you have gone through, what you're going through, and then what you've learned from that, and then decide to filter out the good and bad, if you will. And so that's one of the reasons why I found you to be rather interesting to converse with you, because you had offered a lot of unique perspective of things that I tend to lean more towards, as far as the approach of things, very layered, very methodical, if you will. Even with your current film with No Dogs, which was something that I had learned that, it was a long process for you to come to put the pieces together. And then, by chance, certain events had occurred that pretty much was parallel to the story that you were telling as well, too. And everyone else also involved. And you've got a great deal of help. Another thing that I also pointed out, that I noticed too, with regards to the research, had to do with, and forgive me because I had written his name down here because I've heard the interview on more than one occasion, Mr. Alex Fabros. So he had discussed in one particular interview that you had done with him where, he had done a lot of research on stuff and provided some insight for documentary filmmakers and whatnot. And then either didn't come to fruition, or it did come to fruition, but they never acknowledged his input. And then when he had noticed that you had decided to put his name on the credit for the amount of work that he had invested in, when I went back to look at the film again, to look at that, I was like, oh, there it is. I see it now. So that to me also showed a lot of things about you that I had realized that you had considered This is the part that I was really connecting with in your approach, was that you had saw someone else who was very knowledgeable, but they were put on the wayside. And then someone else came in, understood that struggle, learned about it, and then decided to include them as part of the creative process, to give them acknowledgement for what they've done in contributing the amount of work that was very helpful to telling the story that you, and I'm sure other people involved, had to kind of formulate to get to point A to point B.
Yeah, I think what was really special about the short, as much as it was making it and being a part of it, is having Alex come to the LA Asian Pacific Film Festival and seeing it with his wife, and he's nearly 80. And, he said he's been waiting 30 years to see a project like this. And even on the podcast that you mentioned, he said, it's the first time I've been credited. And I honestly, that was the first time I heard that on that podcast. So I was actually also taken aback, and it also increased the value and the meaning of having him come to the festival and see it in person. And, he actually pushed his eye surgery to watch the final cut in May, because he actually is going legally blind. And so when he went to the festival, he had to wear an eye patch. But things we take for granted, like experiencing a movie in cinema, to someone who's lived through it, it's very different. And I think I love reading, but not everyone loves reading. So I think cinema is another wonderful way to share our stories in a larger way, in a vaster way. And I always think of that kid who is growing up, maybe not in Los Angeles, maybe not in New York, maybe not in San Francisco, that feels really alone or unseen in other areas where they are a minority. To turn on Netflix or turn on Amazon or turn on Hulu and see themselves and learn more about it and feel seen is really powerful and very important. So I think crediting Alex and our mission to amplify our voice is really important, because it is really for the next generation, and to give people the visibility that I never had, and for me also to inspire just all filmmakers, all women, all people of color to really be a part of the change. Because I think, we always say, oh, the Oscar numbers are down this year and blah, 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 and all this, and it sucks. But I think I always say I'm not an armchair filmmaker. I want to be out there being a part of the change rather than complaining about what's not happening. I think being an example is one of the best things we could be, and it's not easy. That's why people like to talk. Taking action is a lot harder. So I think that's what really drives me, is knowing that it means a lot to people like Alex. It means a lot to people like my niece. It means a lot to people who are, even when Shang-Chi opened a few weeks ago, to have little kids have an action figure. That like them is very important.
So seeing the rise and falls of people of color in cinema and being in an industry now, especially now as the way things are going for people of color, I'm always curious to hear what people of color's perspective in the business is, being in the trenches. So for you right now, like when you're seeing all this positive attention and people reaching out to you, giving you praise for this new film, and then the opportunities that are be coming from that, I would imagine, do you have hope that it's going to work out and that things will actually get better? Because more of these guys that were growing up in this stuff are now taking more and more control of their destiny, if you will. And I think you're obviously a big example of that, but I'm curious to see what your thoughts are on that now.
Yes, I think it's absolutely getting better. I think what's a little challenging that I will say within being in Filipino filmmaking community is the financing. I mean, we personally I personally financed the short film. And that was a lot for COVID times. So it was very risque, but we were very lucky that we had these two wonderful guys, Ryan and Daniel, who owned RD Media House, really come through and just let us use their equipment. They came in and they helped us. After working a full day of a commercial, they brought their van full of equipment that they owned and they helped us. And they're not Filipino, and they were very collaborative. So I think collaboration is key, especially from Filipino filmmaking. It can't just be Filipino filmmakers. I think we have to kind of help each other and be allies in each other's storytelling. I think it's getting a lot better. For sure. I think that we don't yet have a case study specifically for Filipinos. We do have for Asian cinema. I mean, look at Parasite, look at all these movies. I just finished Squid Game, and I know that's a TV show, but there's a lot of other ethnic groups that are really powerful in and really value
Storytelling.
And high quality caliber things. And I think that as a culture, we kind of have to invest in each other so that the next generation will have the financiers to be able to greenlight their films. I think that it's a cultural thing, I do believe, because I don't think we've seen it be something that is viewed as a business. And I kind of see it how people take up space. And that's something I really like talking about is how generational trauma and thoughts are passed down and how it has manifested itself in the film industry. I mean, I think, you know, it's very challenging, but I think we have to be an example and show, wow, look what happens when we come together and make the short film happen. This is a beta test. Look what else is possible if we have more resources. What if we have Desperado? This is our El Mariachi, you know? So I think we all have to kind of do it ourselves, I think, in the beginning. And then as we go, collaborate with other production companies and filmmakers to have more resources to make these larger things. And it really comes down to who's behind these production companies. And those people are becoming more and more diverse. And I think that's really wonderful. So I think it's better because the people behind making these decisions are no longer this one-sided group. It's definitely changed. And I think people call each other out when it's one-sided, when there's no intersectionality, when it's often to benefit this one person or this one group. Specifically, I think the female empowerment movement is really wonderful, but sometimes I notice that in the beginning, it was really white women, right? And I think what's really important now is that we go, you know what? It's really important that we also highlight other groups and help each other and cross over. So I think for me, it's getting a lot better, but it really is about collaborating and then really supporting each other on those opening days, on those opening weekends, and showing that we are consumers. People like us are consumers behind the box office numbers, and that we want to see more projects like this, because that's really, at the end of the day, whether we're artists or not, it is a business, and people respond to that. And if we're purchasing products for other movies, Marvel movies, other DC movies on opening weekends, why aren't we doing it for each other for independent films? I think it's very important to, whether it's good or not, you gotta support. I think that's really you gotta be putting your money where your mouth is if you want to see change.
So I'm curious on your perspective here, about how you feel like that could change for people to give an opportunity for a director of any ethnic background to really be able to tell a story solely focused on a culture here in America that has the same standards as, say, as a movie like Parasite or a show like Squid Game, that most people are singing high praises for. What do you think would take for someone to be able to give that, to create a movie like that, if given the opportunity to tell that, to have that same impact? Like, do you think it's possible for someone to do that? And then where Korea has that impact with their films and television show, that someone here can do that as well too, of that same ethnic background or whatever ethnic background they're coming from? I hope I made sense with the question, but I
think it has already happened. I just saw Blue Bayou.
Yeah, I saw that too.
Wow. Amazing. And he did another film, Miss Purple, and then he also did.
You were in that movie too, weren't you?
It's like in the bar for 5 seconds. And I think I was bored that night. He needed help. And then the other movie that I also love, GOOK. And
yeah.
But amazing. And I guess I just love seeing him grow into these really small budget, micro budgets to something a little bit bigger, and with more, with having Alicia, I cannot say her last name.
Vikander.
Yeah, Vikander.
Yeah.
And he just completely had such a beautiful vision for him.
You know, a person of color is making that, but doesn't have that impact right away, where all of a sudden Justin Chan's name is a household name and everyone's going to want to work with and see what his next project is. Because I'm curious if that has something to do with the fact that there's a certain subject matter that may be considered too sensitive for other people, or may not interest people to want to look into, because they have that preconceived notion behind the fact that it's a person of color and they're just complaining.
Yes, I actually got that from sorry, Mom, if you're listening, but my mother saw it, my film. She's like, why do you want to keep making all these? You're going to piss off white people.
Yeah.
And yeah, but you know what? Someone's got to do it.
Right.
And Clerks doesn't talk about hard stuff. I like that movie.
Yeah.
I love Reservoir Dogs, and it does touch a little bit on it. I also love Pulp Fiction. But there's Schindler's List, and there's other movies that are talking about really difficult, traumatic cultural things that I think also have a larger, vast reach. So I think for us, it's just going to take time. And I think no one in general, I think, wants to see these movies. I think even when I go, I don't know if I'm in the mood for watching this right now. Like, you know, I kind of want to just watch Black Widow, which I loved, but I know I'm not going to have a meltdown after. And, you know, it's just, but that's all of it. But I think it shouldn't stop us from doing the popcorn stuff. Because like, I love The Rock. I love The Rock when I work with him. He's awesome.
Oh, okay. I think about the movie The Rock, and I was like, I love that movie too.
Okay. Yeah, that is a good movie. But you know, he has a certain theme, right? And he's slowly starting to explore his culture in his TV, you know, the TV show that's based on his life. And I think that's great. But I think it just depends on the kind of artist you want to be. And sometimes I can't help it. This is the kind of stuff I want to talk about. I don't want to just do one thing. And I think for the most part, I think that's all a part of art. You know, no one's going to really want to see the Titanic on a Saturday night, or, you know, but I think it is in those moments of when people excuse me, it's in the moments when people take a seat back and they're really moved and touched by something that they've never really saw or experienced, you know. Even Parasite had a comedic
it did. Yeah.
Really, I didn't even know. I didn't watch the trailer or anything because I had no idea what I was watching.
Same here.
Hilarious. And then it completely, you know, took another turn. But that's, I think, what the beauty of art is. It's really not necessarily about the pop culture elements of it. It's really about the depth. There's going to be different types of movies. And I'm a huge Sundance person. I love Sundance movies, but sometimes those aren't the movies that everyone's going to have watched. You know, like, it's just, that's why independent film is an independent film. And that's why other movies, they're made by studios that have more resources, they have more in-house resources for marketing and all this stuff. And we end up watching it without realizing that we've been kind of subconsciously been advertised to watch certain things, versus independent films don't necessarily have that. Even with wider distribution, they don't necessarily have those resources. It really is that's kind of the kind of fun about it, and the magic about independent film is it's supposed to be a standalone expression of art that is not really tied to the too many cooks in the kitchen of a production studio. So that's kind of what I think I see Blue Bayou as. I mean, it wouldn't be that movie if they didn't let him do his thing. And
well, let me ask you something about this, about your comment on this, because, you know, independent movie is, oddly enough for me, independent films, I didn't realize how much of a fan I was, because I've always watched it, but I just kind of like, you know, liked it, but I kind of put it in a separate category, right? It's like I equate it to, like, you know, a nice snack that I really, really love, but I just kind of kept it in the pantry, but I was waiting for the pizza to arrive, right? So but with, you know, with movies like this, I've come to realize that more and more as I get more exposed to independent movies, especially as of late, that in some ways they're a lot more superior in storytelling than most mainstream movies. And I understand, you know, there's a reason for that in most cases, but, you know, when you're making your movies here, in most cases, I always feel like some filmmakers prefer that the freedom in that regard, you know, having to do what they want, how they want to do it, but the hurdles they have to overcome can be very, very daunting on them, but yet they still come out on top in some cases, I would say, and delivering a good product at the end. So for you, going through those moments, I meant to say, going and putting everything together, did you ever feel like, was it too much that maybe you bit off more you can chew, or you have to reevaluate yourself to do it all over, you know, to take a step back and have someone else come in to kind of pick up some other pieces that you thought you could handle and couldn't handle anymore? So I'm curious for you now, like how that whole process has changed for you, getting deep into the trenches here.
2 years ago, I had lost my dad, and that really shook me and he was a huge influence in my life in filmmaking.
Right.
And loving movies and acting. And he was, I would say, my first scene partner. Before we would go to work, we would read bedtime stories and we would act the scenes out. And I always went to bed really comforted. And he also loved comic books. So I would go to bed with a comic book story as well, and folklore. So
and you guys watch a lot of independent movies too, right?
We did. Amaros Perros, I remember I loved growing up. Run Lola Run.
Yeah.
This is when we had VHS rentals, and my dad let me watch all these movies that I think I probably shouldn't have so young, and Kurosawa films. And I think Godfather, everything, very violent movies. But he wanted a little film buddy, and I ended up feeling really, I think my eyes are just so open to all the colors and the music and the acting and all of it. And I just completely fell in love with it and with film. And so I've always known that was something for us to share. And you know, and when he had passed, it was really hard. There was a lot of stuff going on with another project that I'm working on. And I was like, you know what, I'm gonna take a step back for a bit. And I took a break completely from everything, from acting, from whatever. And I just kind of honestly got another job, just working somewhere else. And I became severely unhappy. I kind of realized that life is short, that I'm the one who has to live with the consequences of the choices I make. And it has nothing to do with what my parents think or what this person thinks or what I should be doing at this time in my life. I'm living with the consequences. It doesn't matter what John, Mary, or whoever, what they care. It's like their opinions don't fulfill me. It just doesn't. And so for me, I went, you know what? I'm not fulfilled in just doing a job and it wasn't enough, like paying the bills, working. It just wasn't what life's about. And so I think what happened was during the COVID shutdown, I have another business, and I actually enjoy that business, a retail business, but I actually started writing and things that were, I think, more tangible. I had little shorts that I had ideas for, and concepts. And I view myself more of a concept writer because I think even watching No Dogs, I was I'm very proud of it, but I'm very objective. And I'm like, for the bigger one, we need a professional screenwriter to properly, tighten it up in these bolts. But I always love concept.
That's the producer mindset I think you have.
Yeah. And then as an actor, I'm like, someone could write a better line for me. But I made it work because I think that was the thing at the time. No one's going to write all the stories for us in the beginning. I think you kind of have to have some sort of proof of concept. And I wrote this. During the shutdown, I reached out to Alex in fall of last year, and then I got COVID in January. And I was also going through some personal stuff. I had a breakup, and then I moved after recovering from COVID and filmed it in March. And that was, I think, personally for me, I even went, you know what? I'm going to do what I want to do, no matter what this person thinks of me, or, people telling me, and my former partner telling me to be more realistic. And, I don't know what that means.
Yeah.
But,
I thought I was. That's all I usually tell people.
I am realistic. And so really, I think creating this short had a lot more meaning for me personally in my personal transformation as well. When going, I'm going to follow through. I'm going to make this happen. Even with all the obstacles I'm facing and the people around me are facing, we're going to actually create something that we can be proud of. And I think, art is a really wonderful way of healing and a wonderful way of exploring different sides of myself. I want, I'm writing this character that's standing up for herself. I need to stand up for myself in life. I need to stand up for what I want and what I believe I'm meant to do in this world. And that's to act, that's to create, that's to collaborate. And yeah, I think that's what really came out of this process of creating No Dogs, is really the behind the scenes of my personal journey, is just to really see what can happen when you decide to take something head on and make it happen. And then now seeing it come out, I want to just expand it and make it better and be better. And so for me, I think believing in myself and believing in the people around me is kind of what kind of pushes me through is if I can do well, like if we can make this larger thing happen, we can reunite the team and this person gets a job and this person gets a job. And I can shine the spotlight on this person. And I think that's really what I think I'm getting out of where I'm headed right now is if I rise, others rise. And if they rise, I rise. So I think it's very important to not have a scarcity mentality of, oh my God, this person got the part I wanted. No, because if she gets it, it's still progress for all of us because it's Filipinos representing, Asian Americans representing. So just having a better attitude, I think, about obstacles in the industry and trying to view it in an empowering way rather in a way that's limiting.
Right.
I just don't want to pass that on anymore.
There's something that I wanted to ask you about the movie, and I was trying to be aware that if someone had ever asked you this before, and I don't think they have, and I'm hoping that you can clarify for me, but the character you play in the movie, the accent that you have on the film, your character has come from the Philippines and, has lived in the States for some time now, but I was curious about your take on the accent. And the reason I'm asking is because I wasn't sure if it was a conscious decision for you to keep the accent at a certain, I guess, level, if you will, to not make it too stereotypical, have like an even keel on the accent to not to offend, not to make it offensive, or was it a choice to keep the accent the way it is because the characters lived in the States for so long that it's kind of watered down, that it made sense to approach it that way? So I wasn't sure if that was something you had decided for yourself or you and Randall had discussed that. But I was curious because, considering the story and the subject matter you're dealing with here, if that's something that you're conscious about and how you want to approach with this character with this accent, because, if you have a very strong stereotypical accent, it might kind of take people out of the film and think that, oh, this just sounds like another Filipino or something to that effect. So I was hoping that you can elaborate what that thought process is like for you to take the approach with the character's accent.
Well, thank you for asking that because no one's really asked me that question. And I was waiting for someone to ask me because I can.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I actually took a workshop on a Filipino accent, how to get the Filipino accent. And they had talked about all these movies from, I believe, the 1970s that were written about the 1900s. I forgot. I'm blanking on the name here.
Okay.
But they had kind of explored the different dialects. And it was interesting because watching it, they still kind of had that transatlantic Filipino accent, which is very hard to do. Like, hello, golly gee willikers, like kind of that kind of so it kind of had a weird.
Yeah, I think I know what you're talking about here. I'm just trying to put the pieces together, but I think I know where you're going with here.
People, I don't think spoke that way. I think they over exaggerated to kind of get through the airwaves, right? That was kind of the gist of it. And then, so I took that workshop online, and then I actually listened to podcasts of pageantry because I did want a specific accent that was not so heavy and something that I can actually achieve within the time frame of preparing and also filming. And it was a bit of a hint of the accent rather than the full on. And I did also want the character to have a certain accent because her family came from, how do I say this without being offensive? They were scholars. They were middle class in the Philippines. So her family, remember in the short film, is like my dad owned this and my mom owned that. Right. And that's often the case. So even my family members who come here who have graduate degrees, and my aunt is she is a dentist. She is a, what do you call it for the teeth?
Oh, oral surgeon or?
For braces.
Oh, I should know. My wife works with an office here.
Yeah. Why am I blanking
on right now? But yeah, let me call her.
Yeah, right. Orthodontist, because I had braces.
Yes, that's it.
And also a nurse, and she came to the U.S. and she was a nanny. Right. And I'm just saying, I really wanted to also highlight that we also come from a different vast classes and backgrounds. Right. We're often stuck doing working class jobs when we might be have more educational skills, or people who have law degrees and come here and they're not using it. Yeah. So because they're unable to, because it doesn't translate the same way, and you have to get recertified. So I did want to choose that because that was achievable, and also have a bit more of a background to why I respond the way I do. Because even the way I respond is a bit more modern. And I question a lot of things. I question politics. I question the way this country is made up. I'm not complaining, but I'm also just curious.
Right.
And we also create that backstory that my family had that kind of openness and discussion, because that's how my father's family was. My grandmother was a journalist and academic, and my grandfather had his own business. So conversation was also very welcome.
So when you first started to approach the acting, I know you mentioned that you were listening to workshops and trying to get an idea of where you wanted to go with it here, but with your family, did you consider mimicking their accent to incorporate here in the film too? Or was it something that you just constantly made the decision not to do that and try a different route to do the accent for this character? I mean, I'm not sure if that's something that you are deciding that you had considered beforehand, or was that something that you had done in the process?
I felt if I did not,
Okay.
because I'm not as, I would say, I don't know, close enough to call my aunts to help me with an accent. Their accent is close to the accent I mimicked. My mom, but again, my mom's side is very different from my dad's side because of
Two different regions?
Yes.
Okay.
And my mom's also a little mixed too. So, but she's culturally very Filipina. And
Mhm.
so just very different dialects. And I think what would make sense for the character was to choose that, how do you call this? More societal accent. Yeah.
Oh, I know you're going with that.
Yeah.
Okay. So, but when you're listening to it now and watching the film, I mean, are you content with the approach you took with the accent, and hoping that, you know, with anyone that's watching this here, I mean, I'm not sure if I'm not sure if you considered on how a Filipino who's born in the Philippines watching it here looks at that and may say, you know, I don't know, you know, do you consider that at all?
Of course.
Okay.
But you know, of course I do. But I think the person that was teaching is from the Philippines, the workshop that I took, and a lot of the accents actually were close to what we mimicked, or what I had decided to kind of include. You know, I might choose a different one for the larger one if there's an accent or a voice that I feel is more aligned. But I think at that time that was the decision that I made. And yeah,
Right,
you know,
right.
my family did watch it. They didn't. They're like, oh, good job on the accent. And
Oh,
then
really? Okay. Okay.
and I did intend it to be a bit of more of a hint that wasn't straying too far
Right.
from mine, because what I didn't want to do was get so distracted by trying to take on a full-on accent, because we actually shot in March of this year, so we
Right.
only really had, though I was writing, the actual preparation was probably about a month. And I did bring in my Alexander technique teacher, and he specializes in character, like deep character work, period piece, and animal studies. So that was one of the notes, was really trying to embody the essence rather than try to get the accent right.
Right.
Get the emotion more than the accent.
Was it difficult for you to maintain it and to kind of get into it and get the swing of it? Or did you go method with it when you're not actually shooting, and, you know, keeping it within between the takes?
I spoke that way for like 3 days, and I spoke
Okay.
that way in the car when I was driving with the other actor. We both
Yeah.
carpooled. And then when I was there, I was speaking the accent.
Okay.
Even setting up the set and talking to Randall, I was in the accent.
Was it awkward for you to do that, in starting that, to do that in front of the people who know you not having the accent? Like, was it uncomfortable for you at first, and then you got a little bit, okay, so you were fine with it then?
I think for me, the most important thing is always the performance for me. I don't care what other people think.
Right.
But I think they knew. And I think, and like Ian, you know, he had an American accent, so he had it easy.
Yeah.
But I think for the most part,
Should put out an Irish accent, then he would have really
yeah,
been.
he could. I think he's Irish. But,
Okay.
I think yeah, it was more important to me to embody the character, and even preparing. I was really worried. Oh God, I have so much to do when I get to set. I'm worried that I literally was setting up the background, the job posting. I had my sneakers and my leggings, and I probably had this outfit on. And then I changed into the dress
costume, yeah.
because we were all so manic and frantic to set up and get going and dress the set because we had hybrid jobs because we had a very limited amount of time to get ready. But I think Ian and I had rehearsed 3 to 4 times a week with our technique teacher and together and in the dog park and in the park and with our masks and with our masks off after we got tested. I mean, this was in March where it was still a little bit before people were slowly getting vaccinated and all that was happening. So, and I had it, but I recovered and we were really, really being safe. But it's difficult when you are, majority of acting is really touching people, being in the room with them. And so we were making sure to really trust each other, that we were the only people we would really interact with during this time period, and that we were getting COVID.
You actually pointed out something about, how working on the set, given the conditions because of COVID, it's funny because I heard one interview and you guys were talking about shooting during COVID, or, during that period of COVID, well, COVID still happening, but, during that period where it was like that slow turning point of people kind of mingling back together on a more frequent basis. But once I had listened to one of those interviews, I think it might have been with Chopin's show with Patrick, but when you had talked about that, I want to see the filming because I saw it 3 times. But when I saw, I think the second or third time, that's when I noticed that the direction that you took with the story and them not having to, the characters not having to touch each other, obviously COVID being a factor into that, but just because of their 2 different backgrounds and their hesitation towards one another, I didn't notice it at first that, that was, the approach that you're taking with it because of COVID. So it was more about how I thought that, forgive me, I forgot Ian's character's name, but he didn't want to go near you. Carl, thank you. He didn't want to go near you because you're Filipino. He get away from me. Hey, I got beer or I got alcohol. All right, fine, come inside. And then there's still that distance between you two. And then slowly, as you guys started to get more and more acquainted with each other, then you got a little closer and closer and closer. Obviously, with the tension building up, but again, I just thought that was I wasn't sure if that was I guess I was curious if that was intentional for that reason, but I guess when I saw your reaction, you seemed to notice what I pointed out there. So I wasn't sure how you were looking at that.
That's actually kind of a cool observation.
Okay.
I think maybe that's why this is a good short to film during COVID. We're not touching each other or dancing.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Well, no, that wasn't the original intention, but I think, and we pretty safe with each other. I mean, right. if we had to be close proximity, but I think naturally, organically, because of the work that we had done, even when we were doing Alexander technique, we had animals that we picked, and you pick an animal and you don't go full on become a swan on set. Like that's not the kind of
right.
Not that woo-woo, but I think it's important to, for example, women back then, I don't know if that scene was in there, but I waited for him to eat first.
I'm trying to remember.
You may have cut it, but there was a part where I wait for him to eat first. And usually I
remember seeing that, yeah.
That is the case with women of that time. As much as I am sassy and all this, it still had to be relevant to that time. Even if I were saying something very modern, my delivery of it is very calm, classy.
Of that time.
Yeah. Because now, trust me, I'd be doing all this, I'd be much more animated.
Right.
But I think even just the way I sat was very poised.
Yeah.
And a lot of it was a bit of fear because, we have to bring up the fact that I'm a woman alone with a random man. Doesn't matter what time of the decade or it's, I remember I had to put my feet on the ground just in case I had to run. And I think I wasn't so open in the beginning. I had my coat on. I was kind of ready to go with my stuff if I needed to be. And then slowly it's that I was eating. Once food comes out, it's kind of a sense of, here, welcome, sit down.
Like the walls are coming down pretty much.
Exactly. And so even that, but yeah, we definitely had that intentionally because of the characters, not necessarily because of COVID, but even when we talked about the animals, I would kind of observe him as he was walking and vice versa. There's a sense of caution. Right. And a woman coming into a diner, Is she tricking me? Is her husband or someone going to come and rob me later?
Right.
Vice versa. Is he going to hurt me? Is he safe? Is he like, what kind of guy is this guy? Because there are some people who are allies, who are kind, good people and compassionate. And there are people who are not. And I don't know what this guy is.
Right.
So there's that level of
Distrust.
Yeah. You got to earn it on both sides, right?
Right. Well, so I'm glad you were able to clarify on this here, because that was something that, again, because I was looking at complexities of the story, considering your approach. So I always find it. I like to find the nuggets, if you will, of like what sticks out for me in a story, because usually you can always tell who's putting a story together, because they have a bit of their own characteristics involved with the storytelling, right? Um, and considering hearing your interviews about what was you were going for and how you like to approach things, there was a lot of layers in those stories that I picked up on that I found to be rather unique. So if there is an opportunity where you do get to make this into a full feature length film, and you're obviously behind the whole process, I am more than excited to see how you are going to be approaching that, considering the the budget, the timing. I would hope that you would have to be able to tell the story in a much more complex way, but also fill in the gaps that were left in this particular story for obvious reasons. So one thing I wanted to point out with you is, given your background with your love for film, because you had mentioned before that I've come across that your father had, you and your father had a good relationship, and you were introduced to film because of him. And then as a result of that, you've started to grow um, into pursuing that, basically. And this was something that I know you had mentioned before that wasn't really highly regarded for you to take as far as the career path you wanted it to go for. But it was a choice that you made, and obviously you stuck with it, and here you are with it now. So I'm wondering now, with the path that you've taken here, and the amount of work that you've invested, and also seeing the amount of setbacks you were dealt with because of your ethnicity and the auditions you were getting, was there at any point from your family members that they had advised you, I told you it wasn't going to work, why are you still doing this? Just go back and doing this here. And then when you stuck with it, and then you realize they're seeing that, okay, there's some progress being made, was there a change of tune from them as a result of the amount of control you've taken upon yourself to dictate your path, if you will?
I think the more that I kind of involve them in the wins or set boundaries, the more that particularly, sorry mom, but she's probably not gonna watch this. My mother is a tough cookie, but she comes at it from a place of love. And I think I view it as, she's just never seen anything like this before. She's never seen Filipinos on the screen. And I think it makes me actually fight harder, because I want her to take up space. I want her and to see herself in film. And I think it does cause her to feel a little invisible and act invisible at times, because we're not represented. And so I don't think it serves me to, though she's coming from a kind, loving place of wanting me to be at pick a career that's stable or whatever. I don't think it's going to even serve her to serve me to listen to, her well-meaning advice, because I'm going to have, again, like I said, I'm going to have to live with the consequences of my actions. And I do believe that we have really rich, wonderful stories, and that we have a lot to contribute to the film industry that is actually going to be very lucrative, because I think Filipinos, Latinx community, the Black community, all people really love to see themselves in film, and there's all types of people.
Right.
And I think that it's really important to represent all types of people, because there are the consumers. So I think that as I progress, as I follow through, and I started to not talk about it as much until there's something to talk about, even in general. I didn't even say I filmed this. They had no idea I filmed this. They had no idea I was working on it until, we're premiering next week. What? I think it's actually important to protect your heart in a way, and protect what you're doing, and not have too many in the kitchen, especially if it's people like family who you regard their opinions so highly. I think it's very important to kind of invite them when it's out and about rather than take them for the ride. There are some people you can do that with, and there are some people that I don't think it's advisable to do that. And I think that's what you have to discern is when it comes to friends, they should be the ones that are going to be all for it. But when it comes to family, you can't pick your family. So you have to really take care of your own energy and protect that, and really know when to set boundaries with your family. Because that, again, it is what it is. They're going to have their opinions. And
I actually agree with you on that approach too.
Yeah.
So I understand where you're coming from with that. But you know, there's something that you had pointed out about telling stories of, you know, people of your background and, you know, Hispanics and Black people. One thing that I've noticed a lot lately is that there is a landmark moment in film that comes out that really, I wouldn't say necessarily change the landscape, but changes the direction, if you will. Like for me, one of the biggest examples that as of late in the last couple of years is Jordan Peele, African American who is known for comedy, but he's directing horror movies. That to me is a game changer, because if he's doing that, someone else is going to be able to do that too, and may possibly take it to the next level. I mean, I have been a strong proponent for people who are doing something different, whether it's been done before, but just providing a different perspective. And I'm very happy to see that people of color are more are become more aware and have been more given more attention to allow them to be able to tell these stories and tell very impactful stories on that. And I just hope it's just a matter of time before people actually catch on in the mainstream, where it's not independent stuff, but it's now part of the standard in Hollywood, if you will. And I'm not sure if there's anything that you want to commentate on about how you felt how things have changed for you in the last couple of weeks, and understanding what you've gone through and how you've viewed yourself now from where you have started and where you are now with it. Because I would imagine that there's got to be some sort of satisfaction, or maybe there's not a satisfaction, but yearning for more, if you will.
I will always be a type A student. I think, though I'm no longer, you know, in academic world where we are assessed with straight A's or grades or 3.0s or AP classes, I view the quality and the standard that I follow with my work to be that way. I kind of do that to myself, and I don't know if that's a good or bad thing.
I think it's a good thing because it's working.
Yeah, thank you. Well, I think, for example, it was really wonderful to see, and I slept like the whole weekend. I was very tired because there's just so much going into even a short, even just the promotion and the time, and it's all joyful, it's all exciting, but it is energy. And when you're passionate, it does cost you that energy. You got to recharge. So even last night, I just cried. I don't know why, but because, and it was not necessarily, I would say, happiness or sadness. It was just wanting to be better. It sounds really strange.
I know what you're saying. Yeah, I understand.
I want more. Now that you have a taste of it, you want more. And it's not coming from the ego. It's coming from a sense of pride in knowing that I know what I'm capable of, and I want others to see it. And it can be really frustrating. And I'm not saying this in, again, a cocky way. I'm saying this because I know I need to work. I'm not necessarily a writer. I can always get better. And as an actor, I can always get better. But it's really strange when you see yourself performing certain parts that are not yet available. That's what I think I was upset over. I went, but I could do these things. I could do the rich, dark, heavy dramas. And it's like cricket sometimes. And it's very difficult. You know, it's difficult as an artist to be on hold 4 times on shows, to get so close and then not get it. But that's why I think doing these projects on your own is my outlet of fulfillment. You know, it's similar to musicians and singers who want to create their own songs, have their own albums, yet they're not being handed the microphone to take up space on stage and really express themselves. It's a little frustrating, but I think that's what I felt. I didn't realize what it was until recently. I went, oh no, I think it's just because I'm becoming more aware and confident in knowing that this is what I want to do. I want more. I want to be challenged. I want to have the roles that other actors are being given in terms of the depth of the work. They're not just playing the best friend or the whatever. They're playing all these roles that are so dynamic and different. And I want to be a part of that because I think it brings out a certain part of me that I didn't know I had. And I think the Marisol side, the kind of more meek 1930s woman, is not who I am at all. And I know that as the story evolved in the short, I'm not so meek, but I think even it was difficult for me to wait for him to eat. You know what I mean? Even to be so a bit more unassuming and docile. I think it's challenging, but it was actually a learning lesson for other ways to deliver your opinion.
Right.
And I think acting, I always thought, oh, I love Halloween. I'm going to go crazy for Halloween and blah, blah, blah. I'm going to play someone else.
Right.
That's why I love acting. I get to escape. But it's actually just another side of you, because at the end of the day, we're all capable of being Carl's character, which is this a part of a white led hate group. We all have prejudices, whether we think so or not, we have prejudice.
I agree. Yeah.
And he's just on the other spectrum of it. And Marisol is also flawed, just because, and that's what I like about shows like Lovecraft County.
I haven't seen that show.
Amazing, but the characters are also super flawed. They're not people of color are being victimized, and then the white people are all evil. It's like they're also flawed within their own prejudices of other groups, and them trying to work through it. So that's what I'm kind of trying to find more of an outlet for, is being able to exercise that. And I hope, the whole purpose of this short was really to explore a side of Ian and I, like as friends, that we didn't know we could do, because we've been friends for a long time. We've been, we call actors, we call each other and say, oh, can you do this audition with me? And, we're buddies, but we've never really done a scene this layered or deep. And we kind of worked on it. I mean, I curated it with Alex and Randall, but I even gave him the opportunity to say, hey, do you think you would say this? Do you think, so I said, let's improv. Let's just improv in the character, the scene. And then I would take certain things that worked and put it in there. But yeah, I think, to answer your very long question is that I do feel satisfied knowing that it meant a lot. And Alex actually sent us a really sweet email saying that thank you for letting me be a part of it. Yeah. Especially the older, we all get, we kind of, things are just different. Mobility is different. Seeing our family is different. Everything is just feels a little forgotten. And I was just really happy to know that we were able to shine a light on him and the work that he's done, and honor him and honor his work. And for him to really feel heard and seen, especially when there's a lot of elderly, I was saying in another interview, when there's a lot of violence towards Asian elderly people. And for him to counteract that by telling his story and being brave about using his research to kind of educate more people through the story. So I feel satisfied in that way. And then I also do want a lot more. So I'm already like, okay, let's move. We're ready. We already have our outline for the next one, the longer version. So we're working on that right now. Like I was ready to go. Like, let's all going.
Is it going to be under the same title as No Dogs, or are you going to change it up as well?
We're going to change it. I think No Dogs is really because I was inspired by the sign that I had seen.
I remember you said that.
Yeah. And then I'm like, what, are there no dogs in the movie? You guys hate dogs? People were joking around.
Yeah.
And then even when the guys were on set, they saw the sign. I get it.
Yeah.
So I think,
well, I'm curious about your approach with being in the business now, because I know you had said you loved films, but I've asked this to another actor, Gary Carnes, about this, and I'm curious if you have the same mentality too. When I'm assuming that you got into it because you were passionate about the art form, but at any point, did you ever consider doing it because you also wanted the fame and glory that would come with being an actor? And then, going through the rough experience you have along the way, did that taint your perception and then make you want to give up and walk away? Because obviously you've stuck with it, but I'm just curious to see where your mindset was with the approach you've had, with the motivation you had behind your passion, but then going through the business aspect of it, which is really where I think most people get the rude awakening, where they really are shown the realities of the business. I'm sure there are good people, and I know that there are, but it can also be extremely difficult. I always believe that the movie business can break people, but it can also make people, and it can strengthen them, but it can also weaken them at the same time because of all the superficial things that come with that. Because if the person's not prepared for it mentally, then they're not going to be able to handle the struggles that would come with that. And I think very few people can handle that very well. And you can see, and usually it's always, in my opinion, it's always the actors that most people tend to overlook, that have been in the business for years and yet had been able to maintain themselves, not without struggles, of course, but you can see that when they're doing what they're doing, they love it. And then once in a blue moon, their names get thrown in the mix as in terms of popularity, and then they're forgotten again, but they're still doing their thing. So I'm curious about your perspective and your approach with that here. If that's something that had ever crossed your mind for those reasons.
Yeah, absolutely. Hell yeah. Are you kidding
That's a
me?
straightforward, honest answer. Okay.
I'm gonna do that a little bit.
Okay.
When you're young, I was 18 when I moved here. Who doesn't want that? Who doesn't want to cut the line at the bar when you're and go to the club and have bottles there? And that's what there's a benefit that is very alluring to this industry, right?
Mm-hmm.
Who doesn't want to have nice dresses and nice outfits
Right.
and the fun stuff? But the longer I've been doing it, the more I've built a thicker skin and been tested. Because if I honestly really came into it just that, I think that was a mixture. Like, no, I really do love the work, but I also don't mind a little perk. And still, I love that stuff. But I think it's not sustainable. It's not a sustainable intention. And I think when you're younger, it's a maturity thing that takes time to really know that I don't care what other people think. I don't care about driving the fast, nice car and showing up and throwing it at valet while I have nothing in my bank account. Like, it's the optics to me. I'm gonna talk about it. Yeah, I've been there. Like, let me be real. I've been to the optic game. It will catch up to you. And it is a house of cards. And I've learned the hard way. And I had to dig myself out because I had to go, you know what do I really want out of this? If I really want this, I'm going to make a house of fucking bricks. Excuse me if I can swear.
No, you can swear.
I'm going to make,
swear.
yeah, fuck it. I'm going to make something very solid for myself that I feel is really based on the heart of it, is really the base of honoring my dad, rather than maybe where trying to fill it in with the idea of things. And there was a while where I had, excuse me, I'll be honest, a social media person, and I thought that might help me. And it was a disaster. Like, I felt icky because I haven't even posted in almost a year on my Instagram, and I just took a break. But I took that time, went, I'm going to write. I'm going to fall back in love with acting. And I think where I'm at right now is the most authentic I've ever been, because I want to be the real thing. I want to be the actress and filmmaker that people really go to for high quality work, and is someone that is a reliable working artist and not just fake. Like, because I feel like here people don't realize that people move out here, they curate their social media. People make a bigger deal of things than they actually are. And I know, because at the end of the day, you're going to look at yourself in the mirror and you're going to know what's real and what's not. And I want to go to sleep knowing that I'm going about life in a very authentic, real way. And I'm doing it with integrity. And I'm not just blowing things out of proportion to get likes or to feel like I'm further ahead than I am. Like, I need to know exactly where I'm at so I know where to go. And there's that Christopher Robin quote, like, I'm walking away from where I've been, because, I'm over it. Like, social media, you can't trick people. You can't trick people that you are an actor. You're not a working actor. I know where I'm at. I know I want to book more work. I know that I want to earn it. And there's no amount of curated photos that's going to make me more of a working actor than actually being a working actor. And you see people like, oh my God, like they're curating it and blah, blah, blah. And it's just not right. It's not authentic. And I think that if you want to get to where you want to get, you have to really be authentic and know what you need to work towards.
Right.
And so that includes everything in film as well. As you create projects, you kind of have to go, you have to be real of the resources that you have, that you can actually make things, and you have to do that within yourself. And you're right about people not being able to kind of handle it, because there was a period of time where I couldn't. And what I have to say is, the minute that I started identifying myself, not just as an actor, but as like just a human being, I actually don't go around telling people I'm an actor or what I've done or what I'm working on. I ask them about what they're doing. I ask them, I want to get to know them as a human being, and not want to curate relationships to get into Soho House or to get into this place or to ask this person for a favor later. I just actually want to make good friends. And I want to be someone that people can have a genuine conversation with and just be a good person.
When did that change for you to approach it that way?
Because I met people who were that other way.
Okay.
And it's just, when life happens, I knew who was my friend for me and who was my friend for favors.
Right.
For industry contacts, for, oh no, you're not like that fun social person that wants to go to this place and can get me here and there, or can bring your famous friend. Like, and it just made me feel so disgusted. And honestly, I just know what I want to be around. Right. And I actually cut a lot of that energy, but yeah, I think it's very important to be grounded and be confident. And the people that I know that are very successful, that are working, they don't have to tell everyone what they're doing. They don't have to post all their meals. They don't have to post all their whatever online, or they just are, because they're confident enough to know that what they're doing is going to come into fruition eventually. What I'm doing is going to come into fruition eventually, as long as I am consistent and taking action daily. And not everyone I don't have anything to prove every single day in my life. That's the main thing that I think that people have to know. And that starts with inner work. Inner work is one of the biggest things I recommend for artists and entrepreneurs and actors. Is you have to really be secure, and being secure is constantly confronting yourself every day, the dark and the light stuff, and taking your situation and doing the best to turn around. I started practicing Buddhism as well. So I'm very much into saying, taking poison and turning into medicine. And I think, it's really about owning who you are, and what they say, changing your karma. It's really taking personal responsibility for where you're at, and taking action every day to go in the direction you want to. And one of the other things that I love doing is, my other business is a retail candle line, but I do manifestation.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, I heard about that. Yeah, you're right.
So one of the things that I noticed that really opened me up was channeling subconscious reprogramming, which is things that you're told at an early age that have stuck with you and that have really hurt you. For example, my mom always said, oh, we're not rich. So I always said that, and I stayed that way. Or, oh, we've never seen an Asian person on TV, and blah, blah, blah. And I felt like when you're told things at a young age, it does stick with you until you really confront these things.
Right.
One of the things with, I think, manifestation that I will kind of touch on is, it's not just like, oh, I want this thing and it's going to happen, whatever. It really is, who do I have to become to receive this? Who do I have to become to let the short film actually get made? What kind of person can step up to the plate? What part of myself do I have to bring out to really take on this project, to make this during all these setbacks that we have? And that's what you have to ask yourself every day is, okay, you want this career, you want this, whatever, what kind of person do you need to be to have that become into reality? And a lot of that is really going, okay, this person is confident. This person sets boundaries. This person is balanced and rests and recharge and is consistent. And then once you know what that is, then I think that you can really work towards that direction. And that's kind of where I'm at. It's like, okay, I want to be this and that. Do you think a working actor is spending all their time on fake photo shoots online, posting online? That's more of a lifestyle blogger, influencer, which is totally, but maybe put that energy to writing and creating and collaborating and talking with filmmakers or learning more about different types of equipment. I think that putting your energy where it matters is very important. The things that'll actually, what we call jumping the line, cutting the line really is something that'll propel you forward. And, maybe setting that timer. I did set my timer on social media to really cut my time to 10 minutes a day. It just blocks my apps. So you don't go into this hole. Or when I'm writing, turn off my Wi-Fi and just write or read what I need to read. And maybe don't go out sometimes. Maybe it's your time for the whole week to get that thing you need to finish done. And I think having boundaries with yourself. So, for the people who are, having these obstacles, it really starts within you. It's all there. I do believe it's all there. I think it's just a matter of managing yourself, which I'm learning.
Do you think you're a demanding person? Because
I know I'm coming off as one.
It's true, and I mean that in the most respectful way, because this is why I'm asking this here, because we touched upon earlier about Margarita Salt and how you were involved with that production, and I was wondering how invested, how the word I really want to use, to be completely honest, was, were you very demanding? And I don't mean that in a negative light, more like, hey, we got to make this right, we got to make this good, and it's got to be up to par to the best we can do. And then from that experience, then transferring that over, well, not transfer, but moving into No Dogs, and then the next set of projects you have coming down the pipeline. There's a part of me that wonders if you are a very demanding person. And I always feel that's a good quality to have, but it's also a balancing act too, where it can be, listen, if you can't keep up, get out, or, hey, if you can keep up, let me know what your limitations are and I'll work with you. But if you're not going to be able to contribute, get out. I'm wondering what your approach is when it comes to working with other people on set here. Because obviously you guys worked very little time and you were hands-on and getting everything set up. And you mentioned you were catering it during the shoot too, if I remember reading.
Yeah, I was joking.
Okay. So
I ordered us food, but I wasn't. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I can see that you are contributing and you're helping out in the process, but a part of me wonders, how demanding could you be in the whole making of the process, if you will. So I hope I asked that because I don't mean it sound like as if you're saying, are you mean? That's not what I'm trying to get at, but I'm wondering if you're, but I'm wondering what your standards are when it comes to that and how people are having to work with you as a result of that.
I hope Randall is on this call. That would have been, he could answer that question. If I'm demanding, I think I am, but I think everyone knows that I let people do their job.
Right.
Like I let Randall direct. There are times where I go, let's just try that again. I don't think that was the one or whatever. But for the most part, because honestly, I don't know how to direct. I don't know how to be a DP. I don't know how to operate sound. I just trust the people do their job. On set, I let Randall take over. I really let him do his thing. And the reason why I did so many other things was because no one was there. We had a very limited crew, but I had to make sure that I also did my job, which is making sure they were taken care of, they were fed, they had masks, we had the set, and a lot of my friends were the ones that came through to help out. So I think they know me well enough to know that I trust that they're going to follow through, that I don't have to be demanding, that I think that my ask is that they come on time, reliable, and that we all do what we need to do as a team. I'm a team player, and but I do have standards. I do have high standards. So it's hard for me to watch some things because I'm like, oh, I see this and I see that and I see that, and it's hard. But at the end of the day, I have to go, it's not mine anymore. Once it's co-written with Alex, once Randall's on board, once Freddie, our DP, is on board, once the guys from RD come in, it's not mine. It's all of our this communal canvas that we're all working on. And the only thing that is my job is on that day is to perform. That's the only thing that I can give them is my performance, because they're going to take care of everything else. And I was actually very quiet on set. I was talking when I needed to talk, but I remember Randall was, yeah, you're making it happen. I was like, you made this happen. And he was so excited. I was very cool. because I'm just saving my energy.
Right.
Mind you,
Right.
I don't know how demanding I was because it's 40 degrees. I was kind of grumpy. I was wearing a kind of not a see-through, but a very thin dress, and there's no heater. And it's like I go to bed very, very early. So we were shooting a night shoot. It was not fun. I was kind of just being very quiet. So I think I am very demanding to an extent where I let people figure it on their own. I want people to figure out their own things that they need to work on. If that's the case, even in my own retail business, I always make sure that I'm not spoon feeding everyone. But I'm very honest when I go, listen, this should have been done X, Y, and Z. Why isn't this like, I want to know, I want to understand people's
position on that.
Yeah, but I think there's nothing wrong with having high standards and being demanding, because I think sometimes things are demanded of me and I need to also follow through. I need to deliver. And sometimes I hate under delivering. And just as much as I demand, I'm demanded certain things from our team, Do
you know your limits when it comes to the work that the effort you're putting into your work? Have you ever been to a position where you realize, holy crap, this is I'm exerting myself too much in this particular area, whatever, or in the entire process? Because I know it was a one night shoot, so I would imagine you had no time to think about that. But after going through the shoot and then seeing the final product and reflecting on it, did you ever look back and say, you know what, maybe I was way too hard on myself in this, or I was maybe too hard on certain people in this situation? Like, do you ever reflect on that?
No, because I think, well, I thought, okay, it would be nice to have some more help.
Yes, of course.
That's what I thought.
Yeah.
But no, I don't think I was ever, no matter how late or cold it is, I don't think I'll ever be intentionally mean unless it's constructive, misinterpreted, constructive.
Right.
But I think for the most part, I think I was we were all very polite and we had fun and we were making jokes and I was making jokes. And
so you think you're pretty easy to work with so long as everyone does their job?
In my perspective, they're all like, that freaking bitch. Never working for her again. They're like crying when they see me. They're triggered. Yeah, all the guys are running away from me crying. That's usually my my go-to.
My life story.
Story of my life. Yeah, they see me and they run for the hills. But I think I'm very open. So people always, but there are things that I am very particular about. But you know what? At the end of the day, I'm collaborative, and you have to be. It's like any relationship. It's how you have to compromise, and that's how I view the team, the people that I work with. Is, you know what, they have this vision, and if they believe in this certain choice, then I have to go with it. Listen, it's what they believe to be their vision. I
think I'm gonna point out something that I was anticipating here with you, which was that I would have the opportunity for me to converse with you and have you open up about certain aspects of your life and your career and how you have changed throughout the years as far as your approach is concerned. You as an actor, producer now, a screenwriter, because even you admitted that you felt like you could have had someone else do it. That's an honest answer, I believe, in where you know your limitations.
Oh yeah.
Because I honestly didn't notice it when I watched the film.
Thank you.
So, but I'm surprised you actually said that, because I thought, because I'll point out that I do know that I think you had mentioned before on a few other interviews with Show where you were talking about how it wasn't that great when I first started, and I kind of gave Randall a spec more or less, and he was looking at it. He's like, all right, well, let me know when you're done with it then. So obviously you were forced into a situation where you took upon yourself, but you were forced in a situation where you actually had to put it all together. So, there was a part of me that picked up on, the work ethic you have in what you're doing. And obviously this is something that you're very, very passionate about. So it's nice to see that, when someone puts in the work and you see the final product, it turned out very well. So I appreciate that you've done that with yourself. And there's also another part of me too that wants to ask you about something with regards about something you touched upon before, and I kind of touched upon it previously, and I actually meant to go that direction, but ended up going another direction, which had to do with your father. the reason I'm bringing this up is because you had mentioned that you wanted to honor him, and I know that you had mentioned that your father passed away 2 years ago. So when you are doing what you're doing now, are you doing it in memory of your father, or are you doing it to honor your father? I mean, I'm sure it's the same thing, but I'm trying to be careful how I ask the question, um because I don't want to make you too emotional, because I understand it's a very sensitive topic here, but I'm curious about how you do things differently now since his passing. Is your motivation different because of what you've had with your father, and then having that those wonderful times with him, and now you're able to do something where you're creating something that you guys were watching when you were at a young age. So in other words, like it's almost like full circle, if you will. So I'm wondering if that has motivated you to do something different and approach it differently because of what you have experienced with your father.
Well, the whole thing that I was talking about earlier about like being the real deal,
Mhm.
uh, you don't put your curated version on your gravestone, on your last words. I think I view life very differently now,
Mhm.
rather than through the lens of others, because losing him was like losing a part of myself. I think of people who go through a loss of a parent, like, or anything or anyone, there's only that shared experience that no one else will ever really know except you two, right? And then even the experience that he shared with my mother, was very hard, and it was like the glue in our family was gone, and that was very tough. Um, Again, and something I'm writing about, and I had to wait to kind of write about it because it was so emotional. Uh, but now I think it's hard. I've been angry with him, and I've missed him, and I've
I mean,
wanted to honor.
were you angry with him because of his passing, that because you were so close with him, and then he's gone, and you were mad that he was no longer here? Is that what you mean by that? Okay.
Yes, and I think a little bit of it has to do with maybe some frustrations that he's chosen. I think,
Mhm. Okay.
uh, you know, my father was very wonderful to my mother and all this, but I think I was also growing at the time, and I was blaming him for the way saw certain things, like how,
Mhm.
as much as he was, you can do anything you set your mind to, blah blah blah. There are certain habits that I picked up.
Oh, so you mean like he gave you I think I know where you're going with this, and let me know if I'm wrong. Because I think I know what you're talking about. Is it more like, hey, you can do anything if you set your mind to it and just push hard and you'll get to it? And then when you go through it, you realize the hurdles that were involved and haven't overcome. And you're like, why didn't you tell me this shit was harder than it was supposed to be? So is that
Yes.
what you mean by that?
Yeah, a little
Oh,
frustration of that, and
okay.
it's always going, I wish you were here to,
Yeah.
to call me and talk to me and talk me through these obstacles, because he was the person that I talked to every day. And when he actually would text me, it was the Darth Vader voice. It's like the Luke, I am your father. I know. And so I think I was really sad that I'm never going to hear that again.
Yeah. I want to say something about that, because when I heard you had mentioned that before in previous interviews, it's I try to be very cognizant of like how I want to ask these questions, because it's not something that I'm not saying I'm not comfortable with. I'm just not sure how to approach it, because I don't know the person, right?
Mhm.
So I like to get a feel for the conversation, where it's going, and then hopefully the questions that I want to ask will come out, and you be willing to come out to answer them. So yeah, I appreciate you sharing that, because it's from my perspective of why I actually love with what you're doing in regards to filmmaking, and then where it started with your father. There's something about that I always found fascinating when it comes to children having a relationship with their father. It's something that I think is very um, it's a needed relationship for a number of reasons, because it could be that it's an impactful one for them that could guide them to a path that they knew they were already set for, that they wanted to approach, they wanted to take on, or they have a path that they wanted to take, and their father or parents or whoever would be the ones that would say, you know what, try this instead, because I always feel like you were better at this, and try it and see how it works out for you, to give that word of encouragement, if you will. But there's also part of me that realizes that there are parents who just say all these nice things to their children to give them all the flowers in the world and say, "Here, take it this wherever you go, and people will love you no matter what." And then realize it wasn't like that. That's a very common thing that I see. And there was a part of me that I did wonder if there was a part of that relationship with anybody, especially when you have a good relationship with a family member, because I always wondered if someone would ever be honest enough to point out those flaws in those relationships where they didn't, really set the realities of what to be facing, despite the fact that you have a great relationship with them, but those issues were never dealt with because it was always like, no, 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 don't worry, things are okay. But in reality, they weren't never that great in the first place. So I really do appreciate you in sharing that with me because that's something that I like to hear more of. And I'm not sure direction you're taking with the story that you're taking from your father, but I really do hope that if that's something that you shared with it, that would also be included with the story. I'm not telling you what to do. Please don't get it the wrong way that I'm telling that. But
Please
I
tell
hope
me.
that
I'm not
write
a
that in the
writer.
scene. Yeah. No,
Yeah.
but I'm hoping that if you're putting it into the story, that reality of what the flaws in certain relationships are going to be talked about and will be delved into. I'm sure I've seen it before in films before, but to see from that perspective, from a POC, that's something that I think is unique that needs to be delved into more, because that's a different perspective from someone else who is not a part of that culture can learn that, like, oh shit, I know what
Mhm.
that's like, but just with not those lenses, if you will. And I really love to see a story like that to come to fruition. And if you're making that story, I would love to see what you're going to take with that. Really, I mean that.
I hope to film it before the end of the year. We're ready. I'm on to the next already.
Okay.
I think with the parent thing, um, there's a lot of layers.
Right.
And I think what was the most apparent was how reliant I was on him to validate
Mhm.
me. When he was gone, I found it in other things, other relationships. Uh, I just was looking for that void that he filled in my life. And the positive is I learned to do that for myself. That's what I felt was the great thing was my dad was just so encouraging, but I actually relied on his encouragement so much that I couldn't encourage myself after he passed. And that's when I believed that I kind of took this turn to really, go into my spirituality, go into self-development, go into really going, what on earth is it that you need to build that own cheerleader within yourself? Because your dad is, I'm spiritual, I do believe, I think what happens with grief is it's unusual when it happens to you. I was raised Catholic.
Yeah, so
I
was
do
I.
believe in God and all this.
Yeah.
I do believe in the afterlife, but I think you think he's going to come to you and say, give you a sign, and it's silent. And that's, I think, one of the worst and scary feelings is like, is there really like what we were, you kind of question everything
Yeah.
in life. And then you just feel this loneliness. And I think that I had to be there for myself. And I think that was the blessing in life and in grief. And one of the things that he did was he donated his corneas. And that's what I'll be talking about in my short, is when on his death anniversary, the woman that received his organs is a special education teacher, and she's able to see because of him.
That's a nice story.
Yeah.
No, I like it. I like that a lot. Um, well, I'm actually going to be near my end here. But I wanted to say something to you. And I really mean this from the bottom of my heart. This actually has been very. I was looking forward to it. As soon as you followed me on social media, I was, like I said before, I look into who follows me just to find something interesting to converse with them with. And immediately when I came across your previous interviews of what you've discussed, like I connected with that right away. So there's a lot that I've taken from what you've discussed, especially with your film and your experiences. And this was something that I really, really was looking forward to, and I was very surprised that it happened very quickly. In some cases, it always doesn't always happen as quick as it has, as this has. I meant to say. So this was something that I have been very looking forward to. I was a little unsure how it would go, not because I didn't think you were not going to be great in conversation. It wasn't that. It was just that I wanted to ask some questions that I hope didn't come off as being intruding, if you will. So I was hoping that I would have the opportunity for us to deal with some things that I was very curious about with you as a person, and then you as an artist, on how you approach these things. And this has been more than uh, it has gone more than beyond with what I expected. So I really want to thank you so much for giving me the time to converse with you, and for you to take the time out of your day to converse with me about this. This was something that I hope I can look back on, because here's what I would love to happen. I say this with a lot of people, but I really do mean this when I say this, is that I root for the underdogs in life. And what I hope would happen is that you as an artist, you as a person, are coming to a point in your career, in your life, that you've got the opportunities that you are trying to create for yourself, to be able to make things happen that you've always wanted to take on, as far as your choices in your career and projects you want to work on, and then give the opportunity for others to take down that path as well too. Um, and then what I would love to happen one day is that, I hope I also get to that point as well too, where we look back on this and say, remember that conversation we had? You want to revisit that again, and then take it from there, and then have another episode, years down. I mean, I say that because it's a long-term goal. It's a pretty odd goal, but I like planting the seed now and see the growth later on. So that way we can reflect back on this year, because I would love for the opportunity to see your growth as an individual, but also as an artist, and look back and, like, I remember talking to her at a point in her life where this is what she was going through. And then this is the turning point in her career. And now I'm happy to see that it came to what it is now. And I really look forward to that in your career, and many of the people that I've talked to in the industry, that um, people may look back and say to me, I never knew who this person was. Yeah, there's a reason for that, because they were never given the opportunities. But guess what? They created the opportunities, and now you know who they are.
Yes.
And that's what I'm looking out for. So I can't give you nothing but high praises here, because this was honestly, this was more like usually I'm pretty like, hey, what's going on? That's just great. Thank you so much. And then now it's like, I'm actually a little more, I wouldn't say reserved, but just a little more, I guess, mellow, for lack of a better term, on how the conversation had carried here. And I appreciate, the time you've given me here to converse with you again, as I said before. So I'm not sure if you want to, if there's anything else you want to point out that you want people to look out for for upcoming events here, but this has meant a lot for me. It really, really has, and I really can't thank you enough for that. And I have enjoyed your short film, No Dogs, a great deal, and I'm hoping that the opportunity will come to fruition where you're able to make this into into a feature length film, to tell a more in-depth story that I think you're more than capable of pulling off here, with the people that you want to bring in to carry on the torches in other areas, that you can, so that way you can focus on other areas in your path here. So but yeah, that's what I wanted to say.
Thank you. That means a lot. And
You're welcome.
I just want to say I'm so appreciative of you hosting this platform for so many people to have a voice and have these authentic conversations. Because
Yeah.
sometimes they're so short, and it's like,
Yeah.
but why I love these kind of the setting and podcasts is that you really feel like you're a part of the conversation as an observer. And there's really you can get the sense and the essence of the person. And so I just want to say thank you for having this platform for artists and other people to really just be vulnerable and share. And that's why I love art. It makes people feel less alone. And what you're doing is that. Yeah. And if it just inspires that one person to keep going. Like, I actually listen to podcasts and things like this to actually help me stay motivated. And I just appreciate that you're doing that. And I actually appreciate the conversation we have. You asked me all these questions that no one else has ever asked me, and I've been wanting to answer and talk about. And
Yeah.
Thank you. And if anyone wants to see our short, we actually are going to be at the Chelsea Film Festival in New York. We are doing virtual, so October 14th, I think, to 16. And
okay. So this episode will be airing this week. So as of this recording, it'll be airing that point. So I'll make sure, if you have a posting for the festival online, I'm going to make sure to have the image put up for there as well too. Be a lot of images that I'll be editing on here too, including your short. So I hope you don't mind with that. I'm not your short. I meant to say of your skit. The skit. I'm fucking up here. of your episodes for Margarita Salt.
This was a surprise, let me tell you.
I'm trying to remember, like, what was the name of that show I saw?
Wow. How funny. Like, thank you for that. So what an interesting comment. You have definitely shocked me in a positive way.
Yeah, I appreciate you saying that.
No, thank you for, and actually thank you for bringing that up, because it's really lovely to just kind of see how far you've come, and also just laugh and look, oh my goodness, look at me when I was 21.
Yeah.